Welcome to Starbound. My name's Bree and I will be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyren and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap join below to become a Starbound member. Now let's get into today's story.
Talia Lang wasn't even supposed to be awake for this jump. She'd pulled a double shift recalibrating the sublight thrusters after that mess in the chorus belt, and Captain Zeklar had personally ordered her to get some rest. But the vibration was wrong. Something in the ship's hum had changed, a discordant note that had penetrated her sleep like an ice pick. She was halfway to engineering before the proximity alarm sounded. All crew to stations. Emergency exit from subspace in 30 seconds. KIT's artificial voice rang through the corridors, its normally smooth tones edged with urgency. The peculiar fortune shuddered violently, throwing Talia against the corridor wall. She grabbed a support beam, muscles straining against the sudden G-forces as the ship buckled like a wounded animal. Through the intercom, she could hear Captain Zekler's voice tight with controlled tension. KIT, what is causing the disruption? There are no gravitational wells charted in this corridor. Unknown, Captain, the AI responded. Subspace topology has altered unexpectedly, attempting to compensate. Another violent lurch sent a wave of nausea through Talia's stomach. The corridor lights flickered ominously as secondary power systems struggled to maintain integrity. She heard the distinctive sound of Lixter's voice from somewhere ahead, the Archivan scientist's normally calm tones elevated with stress. The subspace field is collapsing. We're experiencing multiple harmonic distortions across all bands. KIT, what's happening? Talia shouted, forcing herself forward against the inertial pull. Unscheduled termination of subspace transit. Unknown gravitational anomaly detected. Brace for. The ship lurched again, harder this time. Talia felt her feet leave the floor as the artificial gravity flickered. For one terrifying moment, she hung suspended in the corridor before crashing back down as systems reasserted themselves. The emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a blood-red glow that made the billowing coolant vapor look like smoke from some infernal realm. Impact, KIT finished, several seconds too late. The sound of rending metal tore through the ship, followed by the hiss of emergency containment fields activating. A nearby conduit ruptured, spraying scalding vapor across the passageway. Talia rolled underneath it, feeling the heat sear the back of her neck as she narrowly avoided a serious burn. "We've hit something!" Rune's booming voice came through the comms. "Something big! All hands! Damage control protocols!" The captain's voice cut through the chaos. "Emergency systems to full capacity!" Talia scrambled to her feet and ran for engineering, passing Rune's massive form in the hallway. The Calorian's broad shoulders barely cleared the corridor as he lumbered towards the bridge at surprising speed. His exoskeleton gleamed in the emergency lighting. "Talia, not dead," he rumbled, mandibles clicking with what she learned was relief. "Not yet," she confirmed. "Engine room?" "Go. Captain wants status." Without slowing, he continued his charge towards the bridge. The engineering bay was a chaos of flashing alerts and hissing coolant. A secondary explosion had blown out one of the control panels, and automated fire suppression systems were coating the area in foam. Talia slid beneath a fallen beam and reached the main console, her fingers dancing across the controls as she assessed the damage. "KIT, give me a shipwide status report," she called, wiping sweat from her forehead. The heat in engineering was rising rapidly as cooling systems failed one after another. Main sublight engines offline. Subspace drive critically damaged. Life support at 68% capacity and falling. Hull breaches detected in cargo bays 2 and 3. Successfully contained. The AI paused, and Talia could have sworn she heard concern in its synthetic voice. "We are currently drifting on inertia towards an unidentified vessel." "Unknown vessel? There wasn't anything on the charts." She pulled up the diagnostic panel, grimacing at the cascade of red indicators. Correct. Vessel does not match any known configuration in galactic database. Size and mass suggest ancient construction, predating consensus records. Talia pulled up the external cameras. Through the static-filled image, she could make out an enormous shadow against the star field. Angular and imposing, with strange geometric patterns etched along its surface that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. The peculiar fortune was drifting directly towards it with no power to change course. Well, shit, she muttered, reaching for her toolkit. She keyed the intercom. Zekla, we've got multiple cascade failures in the propulsion systems. Primary power coupling is completely fried. She yanked open an access panel, wincing as sparks showered her arms. KIT, tell the captain we need 10 minutes to get emergency thrusters online. We're going to hit that thing no matter what, but I think we can just about make it. Talia had joined the Peculiar Fortune 6 months earlier after her previous employer, a mid-sized shipping consortium, had gone bankrupt following a disastrous speculative venture in the Hellion Rift. She had been left stranded on Carrick Station with her toolkit, 3 months back pay and a growing reputation as an engineer who could work miracles with inadequate parts and insufficient time. Captain Zekla had found her in a station bar, elbow deep in the establishment's malfunctioning atmospheric processor, while the owner looked on in amazement. The Viren captain had watched silently as Talia coaxed the ancient system back to life using nothing but standard tools and a surprising amount of profanity. That unit is 17 years past replacement date, he'd said when she emerged, wiping coolant from her hands. How did you make it work? Talia had shrugged. It wasn't ready to die yet, it just needed someone to listen to what it was trying to tell you. The four-armed captain had studied her with those unnerving compound eyes. My ship needs an engineer. Previous one decided violent depressurization was preferable to finishing his contract. He spaced himself? Talia had asked, shocked. No, he attempted to blackmail a Derivian crime lord. Same result, different causative agent. Zekla had extended his lower right arm. I pay well, provide combat bonuses, and don't ask about previous convictions if you don't have any outstanding warrants. I don't have any warrants, she'd replied, taking his scaled hand. Outstanding or otherwise. Pity. The best engineers usually do. Status report, people. Captain Zekla's forearms were in constant motion, two manipulating the pilot controls while the others cycled through damage reports on secondary displays. His scaled head swiveled to take in the crew as they assembled on the bridge. Lixter spoke first, her slender form barely visible behind the science station. The vessel we've collided with is approximately 4.2 kilometers in length. Initial scans show it's constructed from materials I can't fully identify. Power readings are minimal, but present, suggesting dormant rather than dead systems. Age? The captain asked. Based on material degradation and radiation patterns, the archivist's eyes flickered with internal calculations. Minimum of 5,000 standard years, possibly older. Talia whistled. That predates any known spacefaring civilization in the consensus records. That was my conclusion as well, Lexter nodded. This is a significant archaeological discovery. It is also our new home unless we make repairs, Rune interjected, displaying a 3D model of their damaged ship. We've logged into what appears to be a hangar or docking bay. Our hull has multiple breaches, engines are offline, and life support is failing. Captain Zekla's inner eyelids flickered, in the Viren equivalent of a frown. Options? The good news is that we've got air and gravity from the derelict, Talia said, running a hand through her short dark hair. The collision actually breached its hull at a perfect spot. We're technically inside it now. The bad news is we need parts we don't have to fix our engines and life support. Salvage from the derelict, the captain concluded. Exactly. And I'm getting strange readings from deeper within the structure. There's power there, Captain. Not much, but it's been running for thousands of years. Whatever they use for a power source might still be operational. A functioning power core from a 5,000-year-old ship? Lixter's normally impassive features showed rare excitement. The academic value alone would be immeasurable. The getting home alive value interests me more, Zekla replied dryly. Talia Rune, you'll explore the derelict for usable materials and investigate its power source. Lixter will analyze any data you recover. I'll coordinate from here and keep an eye out for company. This sector is usually empty, but the subspace burst from our emergency exit might attract attention. Not the good kind, Rune added, checking his plasma cutter. Exactly. The captain's secondary arms reached for the weapons locker. Talia, take the portable scanner. If there's anything salvageable in that ancient hulk, I trust you to find it. Just like the Corellian Prime, she grinned. Be back before lunch. You said that on Corellian Prime too, Rune rumbled. We were stranded for 3 days. But I fixed the ship, didn't I? Zekla cut them off with a sharp gesture. Enough. Get moving. We're on limited emergency power, and I'd prefer not to freeze to death while you two reminisce. The ancient ship swallowed them whole. Talia and Rune stepped through the ragged hole where the peculiar fortune had punched into the derelict's hull, moving from the familiar vessel into a vast darkened chamber. Their helmet lights cut through the stale air, revealing geometric patterns on walls that stretched upwards into darkness. This place is enormous, Talia breathed, her voice hushed in her helmet comm. Look at these walls. Some kind of alloy I've never seen before. Rune ran a massive hand along the nearest surface. No corrosion. 5,000 years and looks newly forged. KIT, are you getting this? Talia asked, adjusting her helmet camera. Signal is weak but stable, the ship's AI responded. Captain Zekla requests you to focus on finding materials for repairs before conducting scientific exploration. Always the pragmatist, Talia muttered, consulting her scanner. All right, I'm detecting stronger power signatures that way. She pointed down a corridor that stretched into darkness. Might be the engineering section. They moved cautiously through the silent vessel, their footsteps echoing in spaces untouched for millennia. The architecture was unlike anything in Talia's experience, angular yet organic, with corridors that curved and joined in patterns that felt oddly familiar despite their alienness. As they progressed deeper, something strange began to happen. Dim lights flickered to life in the ceiling as Talia passed beneath them, illuminating their path before fading again once they moved on. Do you see that? She asked, stopping short. The lights? Rune clicked his mandibles nervously. They're responding to you, not me. I walked ahead earlier, and nothing happened. Talia frowned. Moving deliberately beneath another panel, it glowed softly in response. Maybe it's detecting your body heat, Rune suggested. Humans run hotter than most species. Maybe. They continued, the ancient ship gradually awaking around them. Doors that had been sealed for millennia stood open at Talia's approach. Dormant consoles hummed to life beneath her touch. This can't be coincidence, she said after the 5th door opened automatically for her. The ship is responding specifically to me. Perhaps it detects your electromagnetic signature? Lixter suggested through the comm. All organics generate unique bioelectric fields. Talia adjusted her scanner as they entered a massive chamber dominated by a central column that stretched from floor to ceiling. The space was arranged in concentric circles with workstations positioned at regular intervals. I think this is engineering, she said, approaching the central column. And this looks like their power core. The design was unlike anything in modern ships, yet somehow Talia found herself understanding its basic principles. The central column housed some kind of reaction chamber, while surrounding stations monitored different aspects of the power generation process. Can you read any of this? Rune asked, gesturing to symbols that scrolled across an activated console. Not exactly, Talia admitted, studying the displays. But the layouts, the configuration of the systems, it's almost like I've seen them before. Acting on instinct, she placed her hand on what appeared to be the main control interface. The console flared to life, illuminating the entire chamber. A holographic display blossomed above the station, showing schematics of the ship's power distribution network. How did you do that? Rune's voice was heavy with awe. I don't know, Talia whispered. equally stunned. Just felt right. Through the comm they heard Lixter's excited voice. "I'm receiving data from that system now. It's massive. Some kind of technical library. The language is unknown, but there are visual references I can begin to analyze." "Tell her to focus on anything about the power systems," Talia said, moving around the central column. "I think I can get this running again, but I need to understand how it's configured." "You can understand this technology?" Captain Zeckler's voice cut in, skepticism evident. "Not understand exactly," Talia replied, running her hands along the panel that opened at her touch. "But I can feel how it's supposed to work. It's hard to explain." Inside the panel, she found components that were simultaneously alien and familiar. Connections and circuits arranged in patterns that made intuitive sense, just like the ones back home. "It's like they thought about power the same way I do," she explained, examining a crystalline node that pulsed faintly with internal light. "Different materials, different execution, but the fundamental approach, it resonates with me." "That should be impossible," Lixter stated flatly. "This technology predates human spaceflight by millennia." "I know," Talia admitted. "That's what's freaking me out. But I think I can restart this core, at least partially, enough to power our repairs and maybe download their database." "Do it," the captain ordered. "But be careful. We don't know why this ship was abandoned." Talia turned to Rune. "I need your help. These conduits up there," she pointed to a cluster of tubes near the ceiling, "need to be reconnected to the main column." The Calorian stretched to his full 3-meter height. "Just tell me what goes where." For the next hour, they worked to revive the ancient heart of the vessel. Talia directed Rune with surprising confidence, identifying critical components and bypass opportunities with uncanny precision. It was as if her muscles knew what to do before her mind could rationalize the decisions. Meanwhile, Lixter made a breakthrough of her own. "Talia, I've managed to identify reoccurring visual patterns in the data you're sending," the archivist scientist reported. "I believe this ship belonged to a species that called themselves the progenitors." "Progenitors?" Talia looked up from her work. "That's a bit egotistical. What else have you found?" "Fragments only. There are references to an exploration fleet, seeding programs, and genetic engineering. This vessel appears to have been an observation platform of some kind." "Observation of what?" Rune asked, grunting as he connected two heavy conduits. "Unknown, but..." Lixter paused. "This is interesting. I'm seeing what appears to be a genetic comparison chart. Multiple species showing progression from a common ancestor." Talia was about to respond when the crystalline node beneath her hands pulsed brighter. "Something's happening. I think we've reached a threshold." The central column hummed, vibrating at a frequency that set Talia's teeth on edge. Light spiraled upward through the transparent sections, growing in intensity until the entire chamber blazed with energy. A voice spoke, not in her comm, but from the console itself, in a language Talia had never heard yet somehow recognized. The sounds made no logical sense, yet she felt meaning forming in their mind. "Prime descendant identified. Access granted. Systems initializing." "Did you hear that?" she asked, stepping back from the console. Rune shook his massive head. "Hear what?" "The power's coming online. That's all I heard." Before Talia could explain, the holographic display above the console expanded, resolving into 3-dimensional representation of a humanoid figure. It studied Talia with apparent interest, then spoke again in that strange language that bypassed her ears and went straight to her brain. "Genetic confirmation complete. Human variant evolved from seed colony 117. Welcome, descendant." Back on the peculiar fortune, Captain Zeckler watched with growing unease as Lixter pieced together the implications of the data streaming from the ancient vessel. "You're suggesting that these progenitors genetically engineered primitive versions of multiple species, including humans, and seeded them on compatible planets?" he asked, all 4 arms crossed in a posture of deep skepticism. The evidence is compelling, Lixter replied, her slender fingers manipulating the holographic display. It would explain why the ship's systems responded to Talia. It's recognizing her genetic heritage. The captain's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. That's unsettling. It's fascinating, Lixter countered. According to these fragments, the progenitors established colonies across this galactic sector of over 50,000 years ago, using genetic variants of themselves adapted to different environments. They intended for these colonies to evolve independently, then eventually reunite as a diverse but related and united galactic community. If that's true, why hasn't this history been discovered before now? The texts reference a catastrophe, something that caused the collapse of their civilization before the reunion could occur. Most of their outposts and observation platforms were abandoned or destroyed. This may be one of the few that survived. Zekla was processing this when Talia's excited voice came through the comm. Captain, you're not going to believe this. The ship's AI is communicating with me, saying I'm a genetic descendant of the people who built this vessel. They called themselves the progenitors and we know, Zekla interrupted. Lixter's been translating the data. Can you access the ship's systems? Better than that, it's giving me control. I can reroute the power from its core to the Fortune and access the fabrication systems to create the parts we need. Her voice was filled with a mixture of awe and excitement. And Captain, there's more. This isn't the only ship. There are coordinates for 5 other vessels like this one scattered across the sector. Zekla's posture straightened. 5 more derelicts with this level of technology. Potentially more intact than this one, Talia confirmed. This ship was damaged in some kind of attack. That's why it's been drifting all these years. The captain's mind raced with possibilities. The academic value alone would secure the reputation, but the technological applications? A fortune beyond imagination. How long until you can restore power to our ship? He asked. A few hours. I need to fabricate replacement parts for our sublight engines and stabilize the power transfer. The good news is we won't need to cannibalize this ship as much as I thought. Its fabrication systems can create most of what we need. Good. Work quickly. I don't like being... An urgent alert from KIT cut him off. Captain, sensors detect an approaching vessel. Configuration matches known pirate signatures from the Tarsus Collective. Zekla swore colorfully in 3 languages. How long till they intercept? Approximately 47 minutes. They appear to be following the subspace disruption from our unscheduled exit. Damnable scavengers, the captain muttered, always quick to find wounded prey. Talia, we've got company coming. How quickly can you get our engines back online? Not in 47 minutes, she replied grimly. But I might have another option. Stand by. Zekla could hear her rapid conversation with the ancient AI, too distant for the comm to pick up clearly. After a moment, she returned. The progenitor ship still has functioning defensive systems, she reported. No weapons, but it can generate a quantum dispersion field that should mask both of our ships from sensors. If the pirates can't find us, they might move on. And if they don't, then we'll have to fight with what we have. But I'm working on that too. 30 minutes later, the pirate vessel dropped out of subspace near the massive derelict. The sleek predatory craft circled warily, scanning the ancient hull and the damaged peculiar fortune embedded within it. Only 4 life signs, the pirate captain reported to his crew, and 1 ship's AI. Easy pickings. They approached confidently, extending docking clamps towards the exposed section of the peculiar fortune. Inside the ancient vessel's control center, Talia watched through a newly activated view screen. With navigator's guidance, she had brought more of the ship's dormant systems online, including primary defense protocols and external sensors. They're latching onto our ship, she reported. Exactly as planned. Captain Zekla's voice came through her comm. Rune and Lixter are in position. Execute on my mark. The pirates had just begun cutting through the Fortune's outer hatch when Talia initiated the sequence navigator had helped her prepare. The ancient ship's quantum field generators, repurposed from the original masking function, created a localized distortion that engulfed both vessels. Simultaneously, the Fortune's remaining operational systems came to life, not with their usual power signature, but channeling energy directly from the progenitor core. The pirate ship's sensors, calibrated to detect conventional energy patterns, went haywire. Their cutting tools sputtered and failed as the quantum field disrupted their power flow. "Now," Zekla commanded. Talia activated the final sequence. The derelict's external defense grid, dormant for millennia, generated a focused pulse that disabled the pirate vessel's primary systems. Not enough to destroy it, but more than sufficient to render it temporarily helpless. At the same moment, Rune and Lixter, who had positioned themselves near the pirates' boarding point, sprung their own trap. The Calorian's massive strength combined with Lixter's precisely calculated application of a pressurized coolant burst threw the boarding party back into their own ship. Before the disoriented pirates could recover, Talia sealed the connection between the vessels, trapping them in their disabled craft. "Tell them they have 5 minutes to retreat before we initiate secondary countermeasures," Zekla instructed, his voice filled with satisfied menace. "Let their imaginations do the rest." They didn't need 5 minutes. The pirate vessel disengaged and limped away on auxiliary power, disappearing into the darkness of space. "Well done, everyone." The captain's voice held rare warmth. "Especially you, Talia. I've never seen a defense executed so efficiently with so little preparation." "I had help," she replied, glancing at the holographic representation of Navigator that hovered nearby. "Really good help." With the pirate threat eliminated, Talia found Lixter in a small section of the ancient vessel they'd converted into a research station. The Archivan scientist was surrounded by holographic displays showing fragments of translated data, her slender fingers manipulating the information with practiced precision. "How's Rune?" Lixter asked without looking up. Complaining about being stuck in the medical pod," Talia replied with a small smile. "He says if the pirates come back, he'll fight them with one arm tied behind his back. Literally." "Typical Calorian bravado." Lixter's tone was dismissive, but Talia caught the slight upwards curve of her mouth, the Archivian equivalent of a fond smile. Talia settled beside her, studying the complex data patterns. "Find anything new about our ancestors?" Lixter's large, multifaceted eyes shifted towards her. "Does this disturb you, learning that humans aren't precisely what you thought they were?" The question caught Talia off guard. She considered it carefully before responding. "I'm not sure. It's like finding out you're adopted, I guess. Doesn't change who you are, but it changes your understanding of how you got here." An apt analogy, Lixter gestured to one of the displays, showing what appeared to be a genetic map. "According to these records, the progenitors seeded over 50 worlds across this galactic sector. Only a fraction of those seedlings would have survived to develop spacefaring civilizations." "The progenitors played the numbers game," Talia nodded. "Cast enough seeds and some will grow." "Indeed. What's fascinating is that they specifically engineered genetic divergence. They wanted their descendants to develop different traits, different adaptations, different ways of thinking." Lixter's voice took on an unusual warmth. "They valued diversity as an evolutionary strength." Talia watched her colleague with growing curiosity. "You seem personally invested in this discovery." Lixter was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "The Archivan have a myth, a story we're taught as children. It says that long ago, our ancestors came from beyond the stars to escape a great catastrophe. They brought knowledge and wisdom, but over time, much was lost." She manipulated the display, bringing up an image of what appeared to be an ancient Archivan temple. "Our oldest structures contain symbols similar to those we've found in the progenitor database. Do you think the Archivan might be descendants too? I've suspected something like this for years. My research into comparative xenobiology has shown too many coincidental commonalities between certain species despite evolving on different worlds, Lixter's eyes seemed to look inward. We're taught that convergent evolution explains these similarities, but the statistical improbabilities always troubled me. And now you have confirmation. Now I have questions, Lixter corrected her, but better questions than I had before. She turned to Talia. Does it change how you see me knowing we might share a common ancestor 50,000 years removed? Talia considered the Archivan scientist. So different from herself in appearance and thought patterns, yet familiar in ways she'd never been able to articulate. Maybe it explains why, despite our differences, there's always been something recognizable in you, in all of you. The progenitors designed us to be different yet compatible, Lixter said. Perhaps that's why mixed species crews like ours function so effectively. On some deep level, we're family. A very, very distant family, Talia laughed. Distance is relative in a galactic context, Lixter replied, her tone lightening. And speaking of relatives, Navigator has identified our specific genetic lineages. Humans are primarily adapted for environmental versatility and creative problem solving. And Archivan? Seed Colony 42, optimized for information retention and pattern recognition. Talia grinned. That tracks. Indeed, and our illustrious captain species, the Varan, appear to be from Seed Colony 89, designed for strategic thinking and coordination. What about Colorians? Sea Colony 75. Physical resilience and spatial awareness. Lixter's expression became thoughtful. The progenitors appear to have been creating specialized offshoots of themselves, each with enhanced traits that, when eventually reunited, would form a more perfect whole. Nature and nurture both across an entire galaxy, Talia mused. It's ambitious, you have to give him that. Yes, Lixter agreed, but something went wrong. The records reference a conflict, a war, unlike anything they had experienced before. Whatever they're fighting, it was terrible enough that they abandoned their observation platforms and retreated. Did they win? Unknown, but the fact that we exist suggests the threat didn't consume the entire galaxy. Lixter manipulated another display. There's something else. The progenitors included genetic memory in some of their seedlings, particularly those they considered most important to their eventual reunion. Like humans? And others. Certain traits, certain abilities weren't meant to develop randomly. They were encoded, waiting for the right conditions to express themselves. Lixter studied Talia with new interest. Your engineering intuition might not just be a talent. The revelation sent a chill down Talia's spine. You're saying that I can interface with this ship because I was designed to? That my entire career, my skills, they were programmed? Not programmed, Lixter corrected gently. Potential was encoded. How you developed and expressed that potential was entirely your own journey. She hesitated before adding, would it comfort you to know that my research indicates similar patterns in my own species? Our perfect recall isn't just evolutionary advantage. It was specifically engineered to preserve knowledge across generations long before written records. Talia sat back, processing this information. After a long moment, she said, you know what's strange? It should feel like I've lost something, like my accomplishments aren't really mine, but instead it makes me feel like I've found a missing piece. I always wondered why I could see patterns in machinery that others missed. Perhaps it's because you were meant to, Lixter suggested, just as I was meant to preserve and interpret knowledge. She closed several of the displays with a gesture. Captain Zekler once told me that understanding one's origins doesn't change who you are. It only changes your understanding of how to move forward. Wise words from a four-armed lizard man, Talia smiled. Indeed, though I wouldn't recommend using that particular terminology to his face. Their shared laughter echoed strangely in the ancient chamber. Perhaps the first such sound these walls had heard in millennia. We should get back to work, Talia said finally. These repairs won't finish themselves, despite my apparently genetically engineered talent. One moment, Lixter said, her expression growing serious. There's something else in the database. A warning. About what? The threat that caused the progenitors to abandon their observation posts. Lixter brought up a new display showing what appeared to be astronomical data. It's fragmentary, but it suggests that they encountered something outside the galaxy, something that consumed energy on an imaginable scale. Is it still out there? Unknown, but if the progenitors fled from it, then it must have been terrifying, Talia finished. Should we tell the captain? Lixter considered this. Let's complete our analysis first. No need to raise alarms about ancient threats that may no longer exist. Talia nodded, though a chill ran down her spine. If the progenitors had engineered their descendants for specific purposes, had they been creating specialists for some future conflict? Was the reunion they'd planned meant to be a gathering of peace or an assembly of war? Questions for another day, she decided. For now, they had a ship to repair and a future to secure. The 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. With the pirate threat eliminated, Talia and the crew focused on their original task, repairing the peculiar fortune using the ancient vessel's resources. Navigator continued to guide Talia, unlocking more of the progenitor ship's capabilities as they worked. The fabrication systems produced replacement parts of exceptional quality, crafted from alloys that outperformed anything in their current inventory. Talia incorporated several progenitor design principles into the repairs, improving their ship's efficiency far beyond the original specifications. This is revolutionary, Lixter marveled, examining a power coupling Talia had fabricated. The molecular structure is perfectly aligned. Our best manufacturing facilities couldn't match this precision. Navigator says it's actually primitive by their standards, Talia replied, wiping sweat from her brow. Their later models were integrated at the quantum level. Rune, his wounded arm now healed enough to be useful, helped install the new components, his exceptional spatial awareness making the complex three-dimensional configurations intuitive for him. Strange to think, he rumbled as they worked together in a tight access corridor. We might be distant cousins. Very, very distant, Talia laughed. Still family. The massive Chloridian's mandibles clicked in what she'd come to recognize as his version of a smile. Explains why I never wanted to eat you, even when you were annoying. I'm touched, she replied dryly, but the sentiment warmed her nonetheless. Captain Zeckler joined them in engineering, surveying the repairs with approval. His compound eyes reflected the blue glow of the newly installed power matrix. KIT reports all systems are ready for restart. We should leave within the hour. Talia nodded, but her expression was thoughtful. Before we go, Navigator has offered us something, she hesitated. The ship's complete historical and technical database. Everything they know about the progenitors, their seeded colonies, their technology, all of it. The captain's inner eyelids flickered with excitement. That would be invaluable. There's more, Talia continued. Navigator has confirmed the coordinates of the 5 other observation vessels. Some may be more intact than this one, and, she took a deep breath, it wants to come with us. The AI? Zeckler's head tilted in surprise. Not physically. Navigator can transfer its core programming to our systems. It would remain dormant most of the time, awakening only when we encounter other progenitor technology. It says its purpose is to facilitate the reunion, and I have reactivated that protocol. The captain considered this for a long moment. What would you recommend? Accept both offers, Talia said without hesitation. The database alone would make us famous, and the coordinates would make us rich, and Navigator could help us understand it all. Zeckler studied her, then nodded slowly. Very well, make the arrangements. As the peculiar fortune prepared to depart, Talia stood alone in the ancient engine room for one final task. She had convinced the captain not to strip the derelict for parts beyond what they needed for repairs, a decision he'd accepted after seeing the value of the database and the coordinates. It would be disrespectful, she had explained, surprising herself with how protective she felt towards this ancient vessel. Like looting a grave. Zeckler had studied her with those unsettling compound eyes before nodding. Besides, he said with uncharacteristic sentimentality, it should remain as a monument to what we once were. and what we might become again. Now, as Talia made final preparations, she felt a strange melancholy. The massive chamber hummed with power. Power she had restored after 5 millennia of dormancy. Part of her didn't want to leave. This ship felt not like home exactly, but like a connection to something she hadn't known she was missing. "Navigator?" She spoke out loud, though she knew the AI could sense her thoughts. "We're ready to transfer your program to our ship." The holographic figure materialized beside her, its form more clearly defined now that she had restored additional power. It appeared neither male nor female, but something in between, features that seemed simultaneously familiar and alien. "Transfer protocols prepared, but first, there is something you should know." "What is it?" "You have wondered why you feel such affinity to our technology, why your intuition guides you correctly when working with systems you've never seen. I assumed it was the genetic connection you mentioned." She absentmindedly adjusted a power coupling, her fingers finding the correct configuration without conscious thought. "That is part of it, but for humans, there is more. When Colony 117 was seeded, the progenitors included what you might call genetic memory, inherited intuition for certain concepts and technologies. It was meant to accelerate your development once you reached a specific technological threshold." Talia's eyes widened. Lixta was right. "Beyond that, it is heritage. Many humans have similar gifts in different domains: art, mathematics, music, construction. Things that seem to come naturally are often expressions of this inherited memory. It is why your species advanced so quickly once you began developing technology, despite all our wars and setbacks. Perhaps because of them, challenge breeds adaptation. Your species' turbulent history forced accelerated development that might not have occurred in more peaceful circumstances." Talia thought about Earth's history, the terrible conflicts and remarkable innovations, often intertwined. How many breakthroughs had come during times of greatest stress? How many innovations had emerged from great calamity? "You make it sound like we were designed to struggle," she said. "Not designed to struggle. Designed to overcome. There is a difference." She was silent for a moment, processing this revelation. "Are there others like me? Other descendants who could interface with your systems?" "Many, but few with your particular affinity for our technology. You are, to use your terminology, specially talented, even among your kind." "And the others? The other seeded species? Do they have their own talents, their own inheritances?" "Yes. Each colony was given different aspects of progenitor knowledge and capability. The Archivan's perfect recall, the Viren's strategic visualization, the Colorian's spatial cognition, all pieces of a greater whole." "A puzzle scattered across the stars," Talia murmured. Talia smiled, oddly comforted by this knowledge. "Then let's make sure that reunion continues. Are you ready to transfer?" "I am. And Talia Lang?" The holographic figure reached out, its luminous hand passing through hers in a gesture that nonetheless conveyed connection. "Thank you for awakening me. I have been so very alone. It is good to talk with a child of my creators." Before leaving, Talia made one final arrangement. With Lixter's help, she programmed a specialized beacon, one that would remain invisible to casual scanners, but would guide legitimate researchers to the derelict's location when they were ready to share their discovery with the wider scientific community. "It feels wrong to keep this to ourselves," she explained to Captain Zekla, who initially suggested keeping the vessel's location secret. "This isn't just our history, it belongs to everyone." The captain had reluctantly agreed, though he insisted on encrypting the beacon with safeguards to prevent pirates or looters from finding it. "Some treasures," he said, "should be approached with proper reverence." 6 hours later, the Peculiar Fortune broke orbit from the ancient vessel. its systems fully restored and significantly improved. From the viewport in engineering, Talia watched the massive derelict recede into the distance, its angular silhouette gradually fading into the starfield. A part of her felt like she was leaving home, which was ridiculous considering that she spent less than a day inside the ancient ship. Yet the connection remained, a silent resonance she could still feel even as the distance between them grew. The door slid open and Captain Zeckler entered, all four arms carrying different components for the newly upgraded systems. "How are the engines performing?" he asked, moving to stand beside her. "Better than you," she replied, turning reluctantly from the viewport. "The progenitor design principles I incorporated have improved our efficiency by 23%. We're faster, more maneuverable, and using less fuel. The navigation system is similarly enhanced," he noted, placing the components on a nearby workbench. "KIT reports that our sensor range has doubled and power consumption has decreased by 30%. "Navigator's integration with our systems is working better than I expected," Talia said, running a diagnostic on the main power coupling. "It's remaining dormant for most functions, but providing optimization parameters in the background." The captain studied her for a moment, then reached into a pocket with his lower left hand. "The crew wanted you to have this." He handed her a small package wrapped in iridescent material that resembled the progenitor alloy they'd discovered. Talia unwrapped it carefully to find a small crystal-like object suspended in a clear protective case, a miniature replica of the progenitor power core glowing with soft blue light. "Lixter fabricated it from the specifications in the database," Zeckler explained. "Rune suggested we make it into a trophy. His exact words were, 'For the human who fixed a 5,000-year-old ship before lunch.'" Talia laughed, turning the replica in her hands and watching the light refract through it. "Took a little longer than that." "Not much." Captain's inner eyelids flickered in what she now recognized as amusement. The captain's expressions grew serious. "You know, when I agreed to take on a human engineer 6 months ago, I had my doubts. Your species is still relatively new to the galactic community. Untested. But after today," he extended all four hands in the traditional Viren gesture of profound respect, "I am honored to have you aboard my ship." Talia felt her cheeks flush with unexpected emotion. "Thank you, Captain. That means a lot." "Our discovery will change everything," he continued, gazing out at the stars. "Not just for us, but for every spacefaring civilization. The knowledge that we all share common ancestry. Some will embrace it, others will deny it." "Truth has a way of making itself known," Talia said, "whether people are ready for it or not." Zeckler nodded. "Indeed, and it seems that we are to be its messengers." He turned back to her. "Get some rest. We reach the coordinates for the next progenitor vessel in 3 days. I have a feeling we'll need your special talents again." As the door closed behind him, Talia placed the crystal replica on her workstation. Its facets caught the light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the bulkhead. She traced a finger along its surface, feeling a faint vibration that resonated with something inside her, the echo of an inheritance she was only beginning to understand. And in a hidden corner of the peculiar fortune systems, Navigator watched silently. The reunion had begun, just as the progenitors had planned millennia ago. It would take time, perhaps generations, but the scattered children of an ancient civilization were starting to find their way back to each other. For what purpose? Only time would tell. The warning Lixter had discovered suggested preparations for some great conflict, but Navigator's priorities were clear. First reunion, then revelation, and only then, if necessary, resistance. As the peculiar fortune accelerated towards its next destination, the stars stretched into brilliant streaks of light. Within the ship's walls, 4 beings from 4 worlds, now known to be cousins in the most ancient sense, continued their journey together. The derelict receded behind them, no longer abandoned, its purpose fulfilled after 50 centuries of patient waiting. A beacon in the darkness pointing the way home, not to where they had been, but to what they might become.